You've probably seen the alarming statistics. Tens of millions of Americans are currently struggling with anxiety and other mental health conditions. Whether they have severe anxiety issues or they simply need a little bit of help coping with day to day life, it is something that so many of us are dealing with on a regular basis. That's why I'm so excited to talk today with our guest, Shaunti Feldhahn. Shaunti Feldhahn is a best selling author, popular speaker, and social researcher known for her groundbreaking work to help people flourish in life, faith, leadership, and relationships. You may know her from her best selling book, For Women Only. Today, however, she's coming on the podcast to talk about her brand new book, When Hurting People Come to Church, which she co authored with James Sells. In today's conversation, we're talking about how we as the body of Christ can come together to help the hurting people all around us. Shaunti has tons of practical tips, and I know I found this conversation so encouraging, so I hope that you will as well. Well, Shaunti, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I am so excited to be able to have what is going to be, I know, a really good, much needed discussion with you. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I'm delighted.
Well, will you start first by kind of setting the stage? What are you seeing? I know you do a lot of research, you've written a lot of books. What are you seeing these days that prompted you to write this book right now?
So, for the last, oh gosh, 20 plus years as a social researcher, I've been talking to people. That's People are like, what's a social researcher? I'm like, it means you talk to a lot of people and you hear what's going on in their lives. And our job, we feel, is to dig out like, what are the things that help people thrive, right? The little things that matter. And one of the things that we have heard more and more and more in an accelerating way over the last 5, 10 years is just the amount of mental health, emotional health, spiritual health distress that is out there in our lives, in our families, in our kids' lives. And so when I say we, my co-author, Dr. James Sells, who's a leader at Regent University, he and I were like, you know what? I think there's an opportunity here for the church to really step in and really help be a solution to this cultural moment that we're in.
I'm glad that you brought that up because you mentioned that the church has a responsibility to step in. But I bet a lot of our listeners are listening thinking, okay, well, I'm not in a position of leadership. I'm not a women's ministry director. I'm not a counselor. Can you kind of parse out the difference between when you say the church needs to step in? Are you meaning the church as an organization, as an institution, or are you meaning the church as in the global church, the individuals?
Meaning us. So and the church obviously organized around the local church, the body of Christ, but I think we miss just how much God has handed us an opportunity and a responsibility as followers of Jesus that it is hard to get away from. I Something happened a number of years ago that cracked me up, but it was a perfect example of this. This is when I was in graduate school in Boston. Okay. And our pastor was a kind of a campus pastor. Like instead of having a church building, they would come on and do the services for students in a campus building somewhere. And so, of course, there was a separate office offsite somewhere. Well, one day the pastor is sitting there working in his office, and a tax assessor from the Massachusetts kind of IRS, version of the IRS shows up, and they're there to do a SNAP inspection of the church because, hey, you have a 501(c)(3) or you have a church or whatever. We need to make sure it's real, right? Like, because you're getting a tax break. So he shows up in this little dinky office and he looks around really suspiciously and he says to the pastor, "Where's the church?" And I answered him saying, "Well, some of them are at work and some of them are at school." And he was like, I realized he was asking, "Where's the building?" I was answering, "Where's the church?" Which is the people, which is us in the body of Christ. And that is one thing that I think so many of us, including me, I'm raising my hand here, including probably most of us, we have thought that's someone else's job to address what's going on in the culture, the mental health crisis, emotional distress. And yet all of us internally, we kind of know, no, wait a minute, it is part of what we're called to. Because after all, let's just say somebody loses a loved one in, an unexpected car crash. What happens? The people in the church show up with casseroles. They show up and they sit knee to knee and just hug. They don't feel like they need to have all the advice. They don't need to have all the right things to say. They're just sitting there being present with someone in pain and listening to their memories and laughing and crying together, weeping with those who weep, mourning with those who mourn, rejoicing with those who rejoice. And that is what I think would help be a light to this culture. If the church opened itself up and said, not everybody's gonna be called to be a licensed counselor. Not everybody can be a pastor. The pastor and the counselor can't see everyone. There are just too many people in need. But hey, we're opening our doors. Come here. We have people who can listen and walk alongside.
Yeah, I love that because as a layperson, it would be so tempting to say, okay, well, let me refer you to someone else. I'm going to send you to the pastor. I'm going to send you to the counselor. But unfortunately, that's not going to work in every situation. There are so many people who need help. And I don't mean this in a bad way. Like we all need help with something, but
Yeah.
there's so many people who need to be served and helped in this way. Pastors can't keep up with all of that. And not everyone's going to be comfortable going to a counselor, or they may not have the resources or the time or the money to be able to afford to go.
Yeah. Well, let me give you just a couple of numbers because I'm a data person and I can't help myself, if
I
that's
love
okay.
data. I love
Okay.
data.
Well, just so that everybody knows, the latest government numbers are that there are 60 million people with officially diagnosed mental health disorders. That's a huge number, right? Here's an even more scary number. And that doesn't include, hey, I have some anxiety about what's going on in my family, right? That's above on top of that. But the more scary number is that of those 60 million, almost 60 million, 30 million are not getting any kind of help. That's almost the population of the state of Texas. That's the reason why, for everyone listening to this, they probably are nodding along when you've tried to find a counselor with room at some point in the next couple weeks. Like, it just is almost impossible. Your pastor, "Can you see me for 4 or 5 sessions?" Probably not, because the pastor is full. They want to help everybody, but they just can't, so they refer out to the counselors. The counselors are overwhelmed. There's a line of 30 million people out their doors. The average counselor can see 200 clients a year. Those numbers just don't work. But there is a church on every corner. There are 8 churches in every zip code on average around the country. There are caring people in the body of Christ who may not, have any kind of psychology training or any of that, but they've been given a heart that cares for people and a willingness to listen. And so one of the things that we're encouraging, and there's a movement, it's called The Church Cares, and part of what we have done is created simple listening resources, for example, a simple listening training. It's just a couple of hours that basically someone can go through and feel like, okay, I'm a little more confident. And so I would love it if every church had somebody who was listening to this podcast who said, I may not be able to be a licensed counselor, but I think our church needs to be a part of this. And can I bring this to the church and say, I will help set it up? We'll have people go through this. It's arranged. The one that we have is arranged as a 6-week Bible study. So, okay, this is the seasonal Beth Moore study and the men's group over here. And we also have this listening training and just basic, basic starting points to help people who want to care be a little bit more confident in how they do that. And part of that is knowing when you really have to refer
Hmm.
to a counselor.
Yeah, because I'm sure there are so many situations where someone really would be better served by a counselor, but they're not going to go for whatever reason, or they do need to talk to a pastor, but they're not going to feel comfortable stepping in a church. A pastor can't talk to everybody, but it is the people. It's like you are the ones who are out in your neighborhoods. At our church, our pastors live like they live at the church in the where pastors live.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so they are not in a like they see a lot of people, but they're not out in a neighborhood. Like I live
yeah.
in a neighborhood. I go for a walk around the block. I see all of these people. Like there's so many people that I know. A lot of them are churchgoers, maybe some of them are not. But like as a not ministry professional, as just the average church goer, like you interact with so many people, with your friends and your family. So this is not obviously to replace counseling. I'm very pro counseling. This is
I am
more
too. Yeah.
yes, yeah. This is more of a, something in the meantime, something a stopgap measure, like, just to get started. But what I'm hearing you say as you're talking is there are so many people who need help in this area. And there's so many people who want to help, who have a heart to help hurting people. How can they find each other? Because other than going through a whole formal program, what I'm thinking is I know the people that I know in real life, obviously, but all of the people I know are like, if something is going wrong with me, I wouldn't necessarily tell anyone. I would keep it to myself. I would try to like
Yeah.
look like I have it all put together. So like I just personally like I am on a mission. Like I am very nosy in my friend's life because I have had situations where I find out after the fact that they went through a really hard time and they didn't want to like speak up about their struggle. So now I will proactively go to them like, how is your marriage going? How is your parenting going? Like you need to tell me all of these things and I will tell you all of the things to create this culture. So you tell me because I want to know like ahead of time, but most people don't do that. So how do
Yeah.
you know you gave these massive statistics of all of these people who are struggling with mental health and anxiety specifically? They're everywhere. How do we find them if they are not likely to pipe up and say, "Hey, it's me. I'm the one."
So I'm going to give you the answer that is going to make some people go, ah, but I'm going to tell you the real answer. Okay. The real answer to that is you have to be vulnerable yourself.
Mm,
One of the things that we found in another study that I'm in the middle of right now, I have a book that's coming out and it's not even written yet. We just got the data back called Habits of Hope. And it's essentially what is it that the people who are the most resilient and hopeful and joyful do, even in the middle of difficult circumstances? And one of the things that we found is that they are more likely to find someone that they know they can truly be vulnerable with and share and sort of develop a relationship based on that. And you know how they do that? They look for someone who's vulnerable themselves.
mm,
And so it's one thing to have the kind of gumption that you do, Brittany, and to go to somebody, how's your marriage? Right? Like, that's great. Like, if you see somebody who's a little bit on edge, like, are you and Bob doing okay? Like, what's
mhm,
going on? Like, that's awesome. And some people are like that, some people aren't. But what's even better is for you to be able to say, or whoever's listening to this to be able to say, the next time you're having lunch with a friend and be like, yeah, things have been really rough with my husband lately. Like, we'll be fine, but man, like, we got into the biggest argument about how many hours he works. And I feel like he wants to work more than he wants to be at home, and get the encouragement from your friend and be open about what you're actually feeling and receive the care from someone else. And guess what? That friend is far more likely then to trust you when they have something going on. When they have, I'm really worried about my teenage daughter. She's been hanging out with a really kind of weird crowd at school, and a bunch of them are talking about transitioning, and I'm worried she's getting kind of swept up in that. She is going to be far more likely to raise that with you because you were vulnerable with her. And then you can encourage one another. And that really is the starting point for the most basic version of rejoicing with those who rejoice and weeping with those who weep. It's just coming alongside one another. And we have the hope of Christ. So we should be the ones coming alongside.
Do you have any tips for those who really struggle with the more in-depth conversations? So I'm thinking that most people probably have at least a couple of people who they can have really deep conversations with. But there may be somebody that you know that you're not really close to, but you kind of have a feeling like, I think they might, like, I see them, they're kind of struggling, like it's not my place. So do you have any
Yeah.
tips? How do we start creating those more deeper relationships where we can have these conversations?
Well, some of that is just letting someone know that you care, right? I mean, that's a huge thing for a lot of people is we are in epidemic levels of loneliness right now, and I can guarantee that there are so many people in your life who are just lonely, right? They don't really feel like they have a whole lot of people they can talk to, or they have a sister but she lives on the other side of the country, or whatever it is, right? And so to be able to say, "Hey, let's go get lunch," like to your colleague. "Let's go get lunch and share life in maybe a way that you haven't shared." And that doesn't mean you have to be open with somebody who's not really a friend about your marital struggles, like that example was for somebody who's sort of a friend already. But it does mean, "I don't know anything about how you and your spouse met. Tell me that story. I'd love to hear that." And then sharing your life. And over the course, it has to be organic, it can't be artificial. But over the course of, you could do that probably in a week or two, is just establish that relationship as you care about them. And it could be that you are particularly reaching out to that person because you have this odd, strange, unexplained magnetic draw to them that's called the Holy Spirit tapping on your shoulder and saying, "This is someone I want you to be in relationship with." You can't do it with everybody, but the Lord could be saying, "This is someone I want you to be in relationship with."
What would you say to the person then who says, my life is busy. I have enough friends. Like, I'm doing fine. I don't have anxiety. Like, I'm good. I don't have time. I don't have interest in creating a whole lot more friendships. Like, I don't have time for that. What would you say to somebody who's kind of resistant in that way?
Well, okay, I'm gonna be really blunt here.
Please
That
do.
could be me. Right? Like, I am incredibly busy. I'm right now, I'm recovering from COVID, and I'm catching up on 2 weeks worth of emails from a big convention I was speaking at, and I'm hopping on a plane on Saturday to go speak with my husband to a group of some marriage events in Pennsylvania. Like, and in the meantime, I'm trying to get a text back from my son in college, like, it's that kind of a life for many of us. The issue is, do I want to be available when the Lord taps me on the shoulder?
Mm,
And if it is the Lord, not my sense of guilt, not my sense of, oh, shoulda, woulda, coulda, kind of that kind of person. But if I want to be available to the Lord, then I have to be open. And I have to be like, okay, Lord, is this something that you want me to set aside? The fact that, no, I actually have 20 emails that I need to return in this 2 hours. You know what? My friend just called. She's in the hospital and she needs somebody. Okay. I feel like that's you, Lord. I'm going to have to trust you with that. And that's hard because all of us have our to do lists, right? Now, it could be, let's just be honest. It could be that that's not the job you're being handed by the Lord right now, and that somebody else is supposed to step into that space. One of the things that I love in the Bible is the the imagery of Jesus passing all these other people at the pool and going to the one person that he was supposed to minister to. And he said, "I only do what I see my Father doing." And God the Father was directing him to heal that one man and talk to him and challenge him. And we don't know what happened to all the others, but the implication is that he did not go to each one of those and heal them. And so there may be cases where somebody else's job, but there may be cases where we're being called, and then we have to be open to accept the call.
And that brings up a really good point too, because I think some people might be resistant because they are thinking, oh, well, I have to do like all of this and I need to be totally, completely invested in their life. And I need to like keep track of them and like what they're up to and what kind of decisions. And it's going to take hours. And it really doesn't have to take all that. It can be as simple as,
Yeah.
hey, shooting them a text every so often, getting a call, getting together when you can. And another thing you said just a minute ago made me remember something that I tell myself all of the time because I'm also in an incredibly busy season right now. I have 4 kids and like 4 jobs, and like there's just
Oh, there you
a lot
go.
going on
Yes.
right now.
You get it.
Um,
Yes.
and I was telling you right before we started recording, I've been sick 3 out of the last 4 weeks.
Ugh.
So I'm sure because of the aforementioned everything that's going on, and it's fine. Um, but I keep telling myself, and I think it's a really good thing to keep in mind, that God knows you only have 24 hours in a day. So if you have more than 24 hours worth of things to do, you are doing things that He has not given you to do. He's not going to give you 24 hours and then give you 27 hours worth of things to do.
Yeah.
So every time that I bump up against my limits, which is like every 5 minutes constantly, because I'm like a puppy with all the things. I'm like, I want to do this and I want to do that. And we can do this and not like, and just, no, human can only do so much. I have to stop and remind myself, God is not going to give you more than 24 hours worth of things, and you still have to sleep. So it's like way less than that. Like, God is not going to give you more things to do in a day than He has given you the resources to be able to do them. So I love how you said, sometimes you do the list, and that is what God is calling you to do. And I've prayed so many times, like, God, what do you? He's like, just do your list. I'm like, okay, I will do that.
Okay. Yeah.
But, and I'm like, shouldn't I like be doing something like more? He said, no, like, this is your season. Like, go do your list. I'm like, okay. But sometimes God is calling you, set the list aside. It's gonna be okay. You need to do something else right now.
Yeah. I love that, Brittany. Thank you for sharing that because I need to hear that too. And I think all of us do. It is, wasn't it Lisa Turker's book, like your best yes,
Yeah.
like everything that you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And so what is it that's the best use of that yes? What's the what is it you're being called to do? And the problem for a lot of us is that we've gotten so used to thinking we should be able to do it all,
Mm.
and we're just not designed for that. I'm so glad you raised that.
Yeah. I think that's something I run into a lot too, is thinking that, like, especially when you're online and you see all of the causes and you're like, oh, I should be helping puppies and orphans, and like I should be like water in like this third world country. I'm like, and I care and I want to do all these things, but I'm one person. Like, I can't do all of the things I can do. And I love that God has wired each of us differently and given us different passions and desires and things that we are good at and things that we are interested in. So you don't have to do all of the things. You do
Or
a
all at
few.
once. Let
Yes.
me let me give you an
That's hard for
example,
me.
okay? It is hard for it's hard for all of
So
us.
hard
I
for me.
mean, let me give you this is just a simple example, but let me just give you one. Let me just give you one. I so this is gonna sound funny, but years and years and years ago, I we had sponsored a Compassion International child, and they aged out of the program, and we didn't have a Compassion child for a while. But I kept talking to Compassion about, hey, they wanted me to be a Compassion event speaker. Okay. And it just like nothing worked. I had too many other things. It just wasn't working. And I really, really, really wanted to help them. And they kept talking about it. It just nothing was working. But I had this passion for that, for helping them. And I just was like, I felt bad. I felt guilty. And then a number of years later, this was just a few years ago, Jeff and I were at an event where Compassion was speaking, and they said, "Reach under your chairs, look at the packets of the Compassion children." And we had these 2 little boys who looked identical. They were in the same program in Uganda, and they were both named Nathan. And I'm like, "How do we choose one of these? Like, we have to have both." These are like twin they were the same age, they were born 3 weeks apart. It was like, "Okay, God is telling us it's time to sponsor not 1, but 2 all
Mhm.
at the same time." At that event, so we go up to sponsor these children. At that event, it just so happened that one of the main leaders of Compassion was there at the table, which was right next to our book table, and started talking about, "We'd love to get you involved in X, Y, and Z." And it happened to be something that fit perfectly
Mhm.
in with our very, very busy schedule that was already very busy. And it was like God was saying, "Yep, now's the time."
Mm.
That passion, this was like God saying, "I gave you that passion, but that wasn't because you were supposed to do all those events 10 years ago. I gave you that passion so that you would be looking ahead and looking around for when the moment was right." Well, the moment is now right. And so I've spent the last couple of years doing many compassion events and sharing my passion for people sponsoring kids, which, by the way, I'll put a little plug in. Please go
Mm,
do.
yes.
Um, but that is a simple example of there could be something that's a passion in your life that you feel, for example, you feel really like passionate about rescuing puppies, rescuing dogs and cats, being a animal rescue person, but you've got 3 little kids and a part-time job and a busy spouse and a mom who's got health issues. You could be like, I'm so passionate about this, but no, I can't go and be a volunteer coordinator at the local shelter. I just can't. Well, keep an eye open. That may be something that God put a passion in you that 10 years from now, when your kids are teenagers, your mom is doing better, and your part time job is less demanding, that you're like, okay, you get a call and you go, oh, now's the time. Don't try to feel like you have to do it all, and that also applies to this mental and emotional health thing. But it could be that as you're listening to this, you've had a passion for mental and emotional health for years, and it could be that you've had to set that aside, and now you're listening to this and you're going, "Oh, now is the time."
I love that you shared that. That is so encouraging to me because that is the season that I am in right now is walking in faith of it is not the time. And it is the time for little ones. Like my littlest one just turned a year not that long ago. So like I've been in maternity and postpartum and like I got the baby. She is napping right now.
Yay.
And so like I can't like there's so many things I desperately like. I want to go on a compassion trip so badly and I want to have foster kids and like there's so many things I want to have conferences and like all of these big things I want to do. And I just have to be like, "But I know it's not the time. It does not fit." But what I keep telling myself is and that's how I've gotten this far is just saying, "Okay, but what can I do in this season? I
Yeah,
can't do all the things." And to bring it back to this conversation, okay, maybe you can't go lead a whole ministry at your church. Maybe you can't go be a professional licensed counselor. What can you do? What can you do in this season? What is God calling you to do? Because like I said a minute ago, He's not going to give you this huge calling with this much resources. Uh,
correct.
He's going to give you what you need to be able to do. So, what are the resources you have? What are the desires you have? What does that look like in your life? What can you do? So, that is a good transition into the next thing I really wanted to ask you is okay, so we're telling these people they need to go talk to friends, people, be there for people, but they're not a counselor, they're not a pastor. So, what does that look like? Can you talk a little bit about the program that you
Sure.
implemented? Like, what do they actually do?
So there are, first of all, the book that we wrote is designed to actually answer that question. And it's called When Hurting People Come to Church: How People of Faith Can Help Solve the Mental Health Crisis. And the initiative that goes along with it is called The Church Cares. So you can go to thechurchcares.com. Here is the thing that I just want to encourage everybody. There are many, 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 there are probably hundreds of different ministries and different initiatives that are helping the church step into this space. Ours is just one of many options, and everything is free because it was sponsored by a major donor who stepped forward 2 years ago and said, "We just want the church to be equipped to be the hero here, to be able to step in with the hope of Jesus into people's lives." And so we've spent the last 2 years interviewing and surveying thousands. We have more than 2,000 pastors and church leaders that we've interviewed and surveyed, find out what are they doing. There are thousands of churches that are already doing this well. And so what we did with that help of that major donor is to pull together all there's some resources that all of them said were helpful or most of them said were helpful. So we pulled together all these resources, put them in what we call the Church Cares Kit, which is completely free and it can get anybody started. And it's just an approach. It's not even really a program, but there are, like I said, we have training, we have workbooks and listening skills. We have intake forms. If someone is like, well, we have the retired nurse in the congregation who's offered to volunteer an hour a week, they can be the one that receives the phone calls from people instead of the pastor's assistant. Great. Here's an intake form so she doesn't have to come up with one on her own if she wants to use it. any person listening to this who's interested in helping get something started, I would encourage you, go to thechurchcares.com, click join us and sign up for the kit. We'll email it to you and you could just look through it and see, okay, this piece would be helpful, this piece would be helpful, this piece would be helpful. I'll set aside everything else.
And I love that that really plays into people's strengths. So you're not asking, hey, you have to go through this whole program and get certified and
No.
like go set up this whole thing. It really is okay, mobilizing the church. What can you do? Can you take the phone calls? Can you reach out to somebody? Can you there's so many different ways that this could look depending on what you like to do and how much time you have. If you're like, hey, I'm the person who cooks casseroles for the funerals, like awesome. Like I would actually love to do that. I love cooking. Um, but, like, what is the thing that you love to do? So I love that it just fits in so perfectly. Like, yes, we do need the structure in this format. That's so helpful. But getting people plugged in, getting people mobilized where God is calling
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Will you tell us also about your book? Because I definitely want to hear more about that for anybody who's saying, yes, this, like, yes, I have a heart for this. This is something I'm absolutely called to get involved in. Tell us more.
Well, the book, When Hurting People Come to Church, is just casting the vision and showing people how. And like again, this is not a program, it's an approach. Every church is going to handle this differently. Every volunteer is going to be interested, like you said, in something different. Like I'm the one who wants to bring the casseroles. I'm like, no, that's not that. No, that's not me. That's you, right? So, how can a church pull those people together, for example, so that the body, somebody is an eyeball, right? Somebody's a foot in the body of Christ, and so, how do we pull those people together? That is the point behind the book. And so, anybody, whether you are a pastor, all the way to the involved, caring church volunteer, or the person, you may not even be a church volunteer right now, but you're the one that everyone seems to come up to when they have an issue. And they always ask you to go to coffee with them and just talk. And it shows, oh, you're a good listener. And maybe you've got a calling in this area, and maybe it's for now, maybe it's for 10 years from now, who knows? But that's the point behind the book is what does that look like? How could a church do that? And some very practical tools that both myself and my co-author, Dr. James Sells, put together.
I love that. And so, absolutely, if you're listening to this and you're saying, yes, I need to get involved, figure out what this looks like, whether that is for you personally, for your church congregation, um, go check that out. My last question that I want to ask you, that I ask everybody who comes on, is say somebody's listening to this and they're like, oh, that was so good. I definitely want to like remember main ideas. If somebody has a post-it note and they're going to write down like what is like the takeaway, the one thing you want them to remember, they're going to put it on their post-it note. They're going to put it on their mirror, in their purse, on their dashboard so that they see it. What do you want people to remember?
You are the answer.
Mm.
You are the solution. If you care about some people are just they have a heart for the mental health crisis. They know people in need.
Mm.
That's you. We're all called to it. It's not just you, it's me, it's everybody, it's the body of Christ.
Yeah. You don't have to be a counselor. You don't have to be a
Yeah,
pastor or women's ministry leader.
yeah.
You don't even have to make good casseroles, although if you do, by all means, we need
Your
people.
church will love it. Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Whatever it is that you can do with whatever time that God has given you. Yes. Shanti, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been so encouraging to me personally. I know our listeners are going to love it also. So thank you.
Absolutely, Brittany, thanks.
All right, so that does it for our conversation with Shanti. I hope that you found that as helpful and encouraging as I did. And I want you to remember our main takeaways from our discussion that we had today. The truth is, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. So think about what God has given you in this season. What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? What resources and gifts and skills and abilities do you have? We can't do all of the things. We can't help all of the causes, but you do have people in your life that need you to show up for them, whether that's in a big way and you're going to get really invested, or you just say, hey, I need to be more intentional about reaching out to my current friends and family and making sure that they're doing okay. Because you don't want to find out months down the road that they were really struggling and you had no idea. So please get intentional about having these conversations, both with your current friends and family. And then if you can get more involved within your church to set up these programs, that would be amazing as well. So, next steps. First of all, who in your life do you know you need to reach out to? Think in your head right now. Who is someone where you say, hey, I haven't heard from them in a while. Like, I hope they're doing okay. Maybe say a quick prayer like, God, who would you bring to mind? Who do I need to reach out to today? Who do I need to have a conversation with or check in on and see if they're doing okay? And then go check out Shaunti's book where she really goes into this more in depth and shares the resources and the statistics that she and I both would geek out over. I love the statistics to really see, what is going on. How can we as the church help? And if you feel like this is something that God is placing on your heart in this season, then please go talk to your church leaders, talk to your pastor, your women's ministry leader, and say, hey, I read this book. It's really good. I should maybe share a copy with them. How can we start to implement some of these things at our church as well? Again, like she said, it's not a whole program, it's just an approach. So, how can we equip people? Because there are probably people at your church, hopefully including you, who say, hey, I have things that I can do. I can't do all of the things, but there's something that I can do. I can cook a casserole. I can write a note. I can answer phone calls. I can be there. I can help babysit, whatever it is to help people out, because that truly is a beautiful picture of how the church was meant to work when we don't just show up and worry about ourselves, but we show up and bands together. God didn't give us all of the resources, all of the skills, all of the abilities. He gave a little to this person and a little to that person and a little to that person so that we would come together. And it's just beautiful when we can all live in community and help each other out. So with that being said, you know what your next steps are. And if you don't, spend some time in prayer really thinking about, God, where are you calling me today? What can I do in this season? You can't do everything, but you can do something. And if you enjoyed this episode, as always, make sure that you subscribe, share it with a friend if you know someone who would also find it helpful as well. And I will talk to you again next time. All right, bye.